Live from the campus of UNF, this is the Daniel Davis Donna Deegan Mayoral Debate with your hosts, Action News Jax anchors John Bachman and Tanika Hughes.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. You're going to be hearing from the two candidates who want to be Jacksonville's next mayor. I'm Tanika Hughes.
And I'm John Bachman. We are live from the Lazara Performance Hall here at the University of North Florida in front of a live audience. We are going to ask questions about pressing topics for our city: crime, economic development, infrastructure, and community outreach. On stage are the two candidates, Republican Daniel Davis and Democrat Donna Deegan. Action News Jax heard from more than 200 viewers who sent us questions for them. But first, an introduction.
Daniel Davis served as Jacksonville City Council president in 2007. Davis was a former Florida House representative, and he is currently the president and CEO of Jax Chamber.
Donna Deegan is a three-time breast cancer survivor. That inspired her to create the Donna Foundation 20 years ago. The local nonprofit raises money for women with breast cancer. Deegan is also a former local TV news anchor. Now, we're going to get to the rules here in just a minute, but we want to start with opening statements. Each candidate will get 90 seconds. Earlier, we flipped the coin to determine the order, and Mr. Davis, you will start.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Davis. I grew up on the west side of Jacksonville, where Rebecca and I are raising our 4 children. I had the opportunity to serve you on the Jacksonville City Council and as your City Council president in the Florida legislature, but for the last 10 years at the Jax Chamber in the private sector as the CEO, growing thousands of jobs for our community. I'm honored tonight to have a special guest sitting with my family, Officer Jennifer Johnson. She was brutally attacked by a violent criminal recently, one that had already attacked other law enforcement officers. I had the opportunity to see her before she went into surgery, and I left the hospital that day thanking God for all of our law enforcement officers that put their lives on the line for us every day. We've had 3 officers shot this year, 2 of them still in the hospital recovering, and we have to, as a community, keep them in our prayers. I'm honored, Sheriff Waters, to be your friend, but most importantly, Sheriff, I appreciate your endorsement in this race. Together, we are going to make Jacksonville a safer, more affordable place to live.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Ms. Deegan.
Well, first of all, thank you so much to Action News. Thank you to you and to everybody out here watching. Thank you to UNF for giving us the opportunity to be here tonight. This is a really important discussion about the future of our city. I am a proud 5th-generation Jacksonville native, so my roots and my love for this city run deep. I was so grateful to be able to come to my hometown and anchor the evening news here for 25 years, telling your stories and holding the powerful to account. When I was diagnosed with breast cancer 3 times, you all had my back, with prayer circles and with hard truths about your own journeys. You inspired me to create and to lead the Donna Foundation. And together, we built something that has provided help and hope to thousands of people in Jacksonville. That is the type of collaboration I want to bring to City Hall. We have got to create a city that turns the page on fear and division, that turns the page on self-dealing politics, people that try to sell our public utility down the river, people that only try to do sweetheart deals that take care of themselves. We need to make sure that we no longer have the worst murder rate in the state of Florida. These are all things that we can tackle together if we work together. And I can't wait to share my vision with you tonight, and I can't wait to be your next mayor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Deegan. All right, let's get to the rules for tonight. Candidates will get 60 seconds to answer the questions, the direct questions. Rebuttals will get 30 seconds. You will trigger a rebuttal if you attack or name your opponent. Closing statements will be 60 seconds.
Now, many of the questions that you will be hearing tonight were sent in to UNF and Action News Jax by people who are watching right now. So we're going to start with a question from Paul on the south side, who asked, What are your top 3 priorities for our city? We start with Mr. Davis.
The number one priority, and all of the folks that we've talked to in their neighborhoods have said that crime is the most important issue. We are going to put more officers on the street. We are going to make your streets safer. We have to make sure that we provide more infrastructure for the citizens as well. I believe in a smaller government and making sure that we take your tax dollars and we get them back out on the street for you, because that's what government's supposed to do. Oftentimes, government loses its way, and they get involved with many things they shouldn't be a part of. And what I'm going to do as your next mayor is to make sure we stay focused on how we spend your money, make sure we put more officers on the street for you, and make sure we spend your hard-working tax dollars back in your neighborhood for the infrastructure that you need.
And Ms. Deegan.
Thank you so much. Yes, as I've been traveling the neighborhoods of this city for the year and a half that I've been in this campaign, listening to people's concerns and sharing with them my vision for Jacksonville, I have come up with a 3-pillared plan that I believe will make us a safer, healthier city. First of all, it starts with finally fixing the broken infrastructure, the neglected infrastructure in this city, and keeping the broken promises that we have been making to our neighborhoods in this city for 55 years. We've got to finally fix the drainage. We've got to fix the septic tanks and so much else. The second pillar is health. We have the absolute worst health outcomes for primary health in the state of Florida. I have a 4-point plan to deal with that and to bring us back and to create safer, healthier neighborhoods. And finally, we need to rev the engines of small business in this community. And I have a plan to bring everybody into this economy instead of just a select few like we do now.
Okay, the next few questions will deal with the issues of crime and safety. A 2022 Jacksonville Sheriff's Office survey found the #1 public safety issue for the community is gun violence. Roughly 42% of Jacksonville residents said it worries them. What would you do as mayor to make our city safer? We'll start with you, Ms. Deegan.
Yeah, we have a murder rate that is 4 times per capita that of New York City. That is just shameful and something that we can't have. Our citizens deserve better. I have said repeatedly, regardless of what you may hear on television, that I will fully fund our police, that I will put more officers on the streets because I've seen the data that supports that we need more officers on the streets. But I'll go further than that. I'll make sure we're getting underneath the causes of crime, especially violent crime. And when you look at programs we've had in the past, like the Jacksonville Journey, that bring in issues like literacy and food deserts and poverty and other issues that can help us to mitigate a life of crime for people, what we have seen in the past is a dramatic drop in violent crime. So we must put officers on the streets, but we must do more than the same old to bring those numbers down.
Mr. Davis.
As City Council President, I led the charge to add 100 new police officers to the street and implement the Jacksonville Journey. And you can't argue with the rate of crime and how it dropped when we did that. We focused on enforcement. That's absolutely critical. And I believe TK Waters is doing everything he can right now to make sure he enforces the law. But we also focused on prevention and intervention methods with after-school programming to make sure the young people in our community don't enter the criminal justice system. I am going to add 200 new police officers to our streets in 4 years. I'm going to partner with TK Waters to make sure we put the bad guys in jail, and so the folks that are prisoners in their own homes don't have to worry about the bullies in their neighborhoods.
And we want to move on into talking about police funding. You mentioned, Mr. Davis, adding 200 new officers. How do you plan to pay for that?
Well, it's all about prioritization. I think that there's all sorts of opportunities to make sure we not only look at the city's finances, we make sure we tighten our belt, but there is money in the city budget to make sure that we put those new officers on the street. It costs about $100,000 per officer to equip and to train and to get on the street. I'm going to find that money. I'm going to make sure we put those officers on the street. We're going to fill the vacant positions that we've had, and we're going to make an attractive sheriff's office so TK Waters can recruit and retain the absolute best across the country to serve here in Jacksonville.
And Ms. Deegan, you also mentioned additional officers. What would be your plan to fund that?
Well, I think we already have a budget that has a great majority. I think almost half of our budget goes to our police officers. So we have a lot of money that goes toward police, but I would suggest that if we spent more time in intervention and prevention, we could save some money on the back end. That's almost always the case. And when I visited the jail several months ago, I talked with a lot of the folks who have worked there for many years, who have seen a lot of young people whose lives really are lost to a life in prison. And what they told me over and over again is that we could save so much money, both in housing people in jail and in the lives that are lost, if we would invest in some of our wonderful intervention and prevention programs. So I'd like to see us spend a lot more energy and money on those than we do now.
There has been talk through the years of creating a citizens review board to independently examine cases of alleged misconduct. The question is, would you support that? And if so, what would that board look like, and what powers would it have? And if not, why wouldn't you support that? Ms. Deegan.
Well, first of all, I want to address the false attack ads that are out about me on this issue. In 2017, the Supreme Court of Florida said that there cannot be a civilian review board that has any sort of authority over police. So that was always a non-starter. What I have said from the very beginning is that if we are going to have a safer city, we need to make sure we are having better communication with our police officers and our citizens. We decided to reject the Safer Together committee that we had at the city when the conversations got difficult. We need difficult conversations. We need those uncomfortable conversations between citizens and police to move us forward. So a citizen review board would simply serve, it could even be a panel of retired judges, but it cannot be a panel that has any sort of authority over police. It's simply a means of making us safer by creating better conversation and, yes, better accountability.
Mr. Davis, Citizens Review Board.
I believe we already have a Citizens Review Board. It's called an election. And TK Waters...
Please, let's be respectful.
Sheriff TK Waters was duly elected by the citizens to be accountable to them for the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. Crime, since he has been in office, has gone down. I believe we've seen across this country where we've defunded police departments, we've dismantled police departments, we've put community activists in charge of the sheriff's offices. You see crime go up. It's happening right now. In San Francisco, the mayor defunded the police in 2020. Just a month ago, she was asking the Department of Justice to help her fill the 500 vacancies that she has in her department, and the drug lords are running her city. We cannot let that happen in Jacksonville. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that our duly elected sheriff has all the authority he needs to attract and retain the best officers across the country.
Time's up. Thank you.
And we just want to remind everyone in the audience of the rules, just limiting that applause so we can make sure that our candidates are able to hear the questions and respond. We're going to turn now to economic development. Now, before we talk about other parts of the city, we want to first ask, what is your vision for developing or redeveloping downtown? We start with Mr. Davis.
Well, listen, this has been a passion of mine for many years as the Chamber CEO. And number one, we have to make sure we have residents who are living in downtown. We have about 7,500 in downtown right now, and we're on our way to 10,000 residents living there. And all of the experts would tell you that once you have a neighborhood that has about 10,000 residents, then instead of trying to force it to happen, it really starts to come along as quickly as possible. And so one thing we need to do is make sure that we establish more rooftops in downtown Jacksonville. I think we can do that by providing workforce housing for our police officers, our firefighters, and our teachers. And that continues to grow the retail and the restaurants, because we all know that retail chases rooftops. So the number one issue that we need to do in downtown Jacksonville is make sure we create more residential opportunities, more workforce housing opportunities, and more retail and restaurant opportunities.
Ms. Deegan, how would you redevelop or reimagine downtown?
Well, listen, as I said at the very beginning, the first pillar of my campaign is infrastructure. The very first thing that we have to do is to fix our crumbling infrastructure, and that starts with downtown. Our sidewalks, our streets, our bulkheads, all the things that are truly crumbling. And in fact, we wouldn't have to give away as many incentives as we do if we would fix our crumbling infrastructure. We do need to bring more people downtown, but unfortunately, I won't say unfortunately, we actually just keep expanding our definition of downtown. It used to be just a core area. That's where we talk about the 10,000 person threshold for development, for that thruster to start. But right now, we have taken that definition and we've moved it all the way around to Brooklyn, all the way around to the shipyard. So what we really need is about 30,000 people. How do we do that? Well, we fire the engines of our small business community that's really been left behind by this city. We give them the tools to be successful, and we want to bring them downtown. But we do want to bring more workforce housing. In fact, we want to bring everybody downtown and have a thriving, open riverfront as well.
This next one had a lot of people emailing us. Many people sending the same questions about TIAA Bank Stadium, asking, how much public money are you willing to commit to help fund the estimated $1 billion renovation of the stadium, and why? Ms. Deegan.
Well, I'm not going to negotiate that deal here on the stage, but what I will tell you is that we are going to bring in the best negotiators to do that work. We're going to bring in the people who are certainly used to negotiating with the NFL on deals like this. And we're going to create a deal that works best for the citizens of Jacksonville. Look, the Jaguars are very important to this city. I was on the anchor desk the night that we got the Jaguars. I was here through all those fits and starts when we were trying to get them. And I know the pride that this city has in that team. We want to make sure we're a good partner, but I also want us to keep that stadium. There are a lot of things that we can do with it. We need a long-term lease with the Jaguars, but we also need to make sure that we're creating a deal that doesn't open the pocketbook like we're doing right now with everything the Jaguars always want, but that actually creates a deal that works for the taxpayers and for the citizens of Jacksonville, plus the Jaguars and the NFL.
Thank you. Mr. Davis.
I'm not going to bring anybody in from the outside to negotiate our deal as a city. I talked earlier about my 25 years of experience, both in the public sector and in the private sector. And the citizens of Jacksonville the citizens of Jacksonville deserve to have a mayor who knows how to be a CEO and has the experience and the qualifications to step up to the negotiation table. And this is what I would tell you. I love the Jags. We get so excited when the Jags win in our house. And I believe Jacksonville loves the Jaguars. But we're not going to give away the store either. We're going to find a transparent process where the citizens can be involved. I'm going to make sure I negotiate on behalf of you, the citizens of Jacksonville. And we're going to have a fair deal where everybody has skin in the game. And we're going to have a long-term relationship with the Jaguars. But I'm not going to give away the store. We have to make sure we protect the citizens, protect the taxpayers, and love the Jaguars at the same time.
And you both talked about negotiating. It's impossible to talk about downtown development without talking about Shad Khan. His net worth is about 12 times our city's annual budget. So you talked about being the person involved in those negotiations. How would you negotiate with Shad Khan, who has a lot of influence here in our city, Mr. Davis?
Oh, I think that I just told you what I was going to do. I'm going to step up to the negotiation table, and I'm going to speak on behalf of the citizens. And I think it's very important that the process is open and public and transparent for all the citizens to be a part of. I understand negotiating major deals for this city. I've been doing it for 25 years. And all I want to do is have that opportunity to be able to sit down with the Jaguars, to sit down with the representatives from the city and make sure we broker that deal. It's going to be a long-term deal where everybody has skin in the game. And I just want the citizens to know I'm negotiating on your behalf, not on the team's behalf.
And Ms. Deegan, how would you negotiate with Shad Khan, someone who obviously has the finances and a lot of influence in the city?
Well, I have met with Shad Khan, and I believe that he definitely wants to be a part of the renaissance of this city. I think he features himself in that role. And I believe that he wants to be in Jacksonville, and he wants the Jaguars to be successful here. We have a lot of needs in this city, and we talked about that. And I think there is a role for him to play in some of that. But I will just say this about Mr. Davis, saying that he's going to be an honest broker with the Jaguars. The same guy that wanted to give us the Lot J deal is going to be the tough negotiator with the Jaguars. I'm sorry, I don't buy it. I think that this administration is run by the same folks that are going to run his administration, and at the end of the day, they have basically had an open checkbook policy with the Jaguars. So I would much rather have somebody come in here that's used to dealing with the NFL than to turn my fortunes over to the guy that wanted to commit us to Lot J.
Mr. Davis, you get 30 seconds for rebuttal.
Yeah, listen, I love my city. I have served my city well over the last 25 years, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that we keep government small. We make sure that you have a safe city to live in. We make sure that you have a more affordable city to live in. And part of that is negotiating strong business deals with big companies like the Jacksonville Jaguars. I don't really mind if Donna Deegan doesn't want me to negotiate that deal. Frankly, I'm going to win, and I don't want her to negotiate that deal.
And 30-second rebuttal, Ms. Deegan.
As I said, I think it's going to be very important to have folks that are used to negotiating these deals with the NFL. There's nothing wrong with that. Listen, a good CEO knows how to put the right people on the bus to create the vision and to bring that vision in for a landing. He's not going to do everything on his own. I'm not going to do everything on my own. You have to create the team to get it done. I've done that before. I'm the only person on this stage who has visioned something out of whole cloth and brought it to the people of Jacksonville for the people of Jacksonville, and I'll do it again.
We spent a lot of time talking about downtown, and of course we know the south side of Jacksonville is thriving, but there are other areas that are struggling. How would you work to bring better jobs to the city's north and west sides? Ms. Deegan.
Look, this is a really important issue to me. For all of the jobs that Mr. Davis likes to talk about in terms of the chamber, most of them have gone to the rich areas of town. I'm a proud South Side resident. When I was growing up, I grew up over there. But you can't give everything to one part of town. And I think that we have had folks on the north side and on the northwest side who will tell you that around election time, every single 4 years, they get told that we're finally going to take care of the drainage. We're finally going to take care of the septic tanks. We're finally going to give them the same economic and job opportunities that are available to people in the other parts of the cities. So what I'm going to do is have a very intentional focus on our minority business owners who are missing out on some of the same type of facade grants and business tools that other people in this city have. And I think that we have to have a focus on that. If we don't, it's just, as Mr. Davis said before, if it's not a priority, it doesn't get done.
Okay, Mr. Davis, I'm going to repeat the question for you. I'm going to give you your 60 seconds, and if you want them, you can have 30 seconds to rebut as well. Jacksonville South Side thriving, other areas struggling. How would you work to bring better jobs to the city's north and west sides?
We've been bringing thousands of jobs to all parts of the city. So I think that that claim is just unfounded. When we brought Amazon to town, we drove through the entire community talking about where they could place their jobs. I asked the leaders at Amazon if they would be willing to hold their first hiring session at the Legends Center in the Northwest community. I drove them over there. We looked at the center. We talked about how the logistics would work. And then the first hiring opportunity they had, they held it in the Northwest community. It was a hot summer afternoon, and I drove in on the hiring day. And there were literally hundreds of people from the community standing in line, waiting to get a job so they could put food on the table for their families. So the claim is unfounded. We've been serving everybody from the entire city of Jacksonville, all over, the west side, north side, and we believe that it's the right thing to do to make sure we bring jobs to every community.
Well, the city is committing tens of millions of dollars toward the proposed University of Florida graduate campus in downtown Jacksonville. So the question is, do you support spending public dollars in this way, and what do you expect to be the return on that investment? We start with Mr. Davis.
So about 4 months ago, I was asked to come to a meeting in Gainesville to talk about this issue. And I remember, after listening to the vision that the leaders at the University of Florida had and the leaders of the city of Jacksonville, that it was one of the most important meetings I had ever been in. And I think we're going to look back on this opportunity to bring a UF campus to Jacksonville as one of the most important pivotal moments in Jacksonville's history. We'll be able to attract the best talent from all over the world. And if we create an environment that is so suitable for entrepreneurs to grow businesses in this community, that talent is going to stay here. Everybody knows the economic battlefield is talent attraction. This is going to be one of the most important things that happen to Jacksonville. I'm in full support of bringing this campus to Jacksonville, and I believe everybody should have skin in the game. Not just the state, not just UF, not just the business school or the business community, but also the city of Jacksonville.
And Ms. Deegan, do you support spending public dollars on this proposed graduate campus, and what kind of return would you want on that investment?
Well, look, I love the idea of having more educational opportunities in Jacksonville, and I love the idea of being able to bring a campus like that downtown. I think there are other campuses, University of North Florida, JU, others that would like to talk about those types of things too. In terms of the public dollars, I don't have a problem with public dollars going into that. I also would like to see more private investment. But at the end of the day, to have a UF campus downtown would be a wonderful thing. I would just love to have more details on that. It's hard to talk about committing that kind of money without greater detail about what that's actually going to provide and what that's going to bring back to the city of Jacksonville. And I feel like at this point, I simply don't have the level of detail. We haven't seen it publicly that would tell me if that is a good return on our investment. But on its face, I love the idea. I just like to have more information.
Okay. And I do have a follow-up question for Mr. Davis. Do you support the spending of public dollars? And then you talked about everyone having skin in the game in terms of what could come out of this. What do you see in terms of jobs coming out of this? So do you support the public spending? And do you also support, what would you see in terms of jobs coming out of this? 30 seconds.
Yes, I think you're going to see public spending from the state level, from UF, from the private industries in Jacksonville, and from the city. I support that. I think it's incredibly important, and I think it's going to complement UNF, Edward Waters University, FSCJ, and all the other higher ed communities in the region, because it's going to be a graduate school that's going to focus on high-tech, AI, fintech. It's going to be something that's great for our community. It's going to bring considerable wealth to Jacksonville.
And Ms. Deegan, 30 seconds if you'd like to follow up.
I think like I said, I think the problem is when you invest that type of money, when you don't have enough details as to what the return on the investment is going to be. That's my issue. I don't think anybody had a lot of detail on this when we committed those public dollars. So all I'm saying is I'm not opposed to the public dollars. I just want to have more detail if I'm going to commit the tax dollars of the city of Jacksonville to something like this. I would just like to see exactly what the return on that investment is going to be.
All right, we've talked a lot about downtown, the stadium, the Jags. One other key component we have to ask about, the Florida-Georgia, Georgia-Florida game. The contract expiring during the upcoming mayor's term. How important is it to keep this game, and what are you willing to do to keep it? We start with Ms. Deegan.
Oh, I think it's a wonderful tradition in Jacksonville. It's been going on for so long, and people in this city absolutely love it. It brings a lot of national eyeballs to Jacksonville, and I think that it's something that's worked for both the University of Florida, the University of Georgia, and for the city of Jacksonville. I think we have to negotiate a deal that works for everybody in that situation, but I think we can. I mean, the complication there is obviously the conferences are shifting, and there can be some movement there, and I'm not exactly sure how that will turn out in those negotiations. But at the end of the day, I want to keep it. I think it's a great thing for the city of Jacksonville, and I think it brings a lot of money into the city of Jacksonville as well. So we should keep it.
Mr. Davis.
As your next mayor, we will keep the Florida-Georgia game in Jacksonville. I will immediately go to both schools, speak with the athletic directors to make sure they understand how important it is to us. And I believe as citizens, we all believe that. We should pull out all the stops to make sure that the Florida-Georgia game, the Georgia-Florida game, never leaves Jacksonville.
Thank you both. We are now at the halfway point. Coming up right after the break, we're going to ask your questions about bad roads, affordable housing, and the campaign ad that everyone's talking about.
We will be back in 1 minute. Welcome back to the second half of the Jacksonville mayoral debate. We are live from the University of North Florida, and at this point we want to stop and thank the UNF community for hosting this debate in this wonderful space, the Lazara Performance Hall. So thank you so much to the university.
And we also want to congratulate UNF's new president, Dr. Moaz Lamayam, inaugurated on Friday. Congratulations to you. And we also want to thank both candidates for being here.
Sure. Thank you.
Republican Daniel Davis, Democrat Donna Deegan. We appreciate you answering our questions tonight.
And now we want to turn to the infrastructure category. The failed sale of JEA led to criminal investigations and indictments, and many voters reached out to us wanting to know where you stand on the future of JEA. Would you commit to ensuring that JEA will never be sold to a private utility? Why or why not? We start with Mr. Davis.
I have never said once that I wanted to sell JEA. And I would tell you, as your next mayor, that is off the table. There is no opportunity to sell JEA when I'm in the mayor's office. JEA is owned by the citizens of Jacksonville, and it's going to stay that way. And as a citizen-owned utility, we have to ask ourselves, why don't we have the lowest utility rates in the state of Florida? It's citizen-owned. Jacksonville owns our utility. We should be working harder to make sure the people that are struggling every month have help. I talk to people every afternoon, talk to thousands of folks on their porches, and many of them are struggling to make ends meet. And we need to do everything as a community and as a city and with our utility to keep those costs as low as we possibly can. And I'm going to work on that every day in the mayor's office.
And Ms. Deegan, would you commit to ensuring the JEA would never be sold to a private utility? Why or why not?
100%. Because if we lose JEA, you want to talk about defunding stuff. You're going to be defunding our parks. You're going to be defunding our utilities. I mean, our public safety. You're going to be defunding our firefighters. You're going to be defunding everything. We get a lot of money from JEA, and we cannot give that up. Look, this gentleman, Al Ferraro, told us on the campaign trail the whole time, was the ringleader of these efforts to sell JEA. In 2007, he started the process asking, how much is this utility worth? He sent a letter. Why do you think he did that? Then he recycled $300,000 of JEA taxpayer money through the chamber to tell people the sky is falling. We got to do something different. The man running his campaign was mentioned 44 times in the JEA report. He's been in on this from the very beginning, and if you believe he will not sell our utility when given the opportunity, I'll tell you what, I got some oceanfront property in Arizona to sell you.
That's time. Mr. Davis, 30 seconds for your rebuttal.
It's just not true. We at the chamber, we run events for all sorts of organizations. JEA has been a partner of ours from the beginning. They asked us to help them run an innovation summit, and we did. I didn't take any money. I'm not going to sell JEA. I never once said I was going to sell JEA. I just want the citizens to know that is not true. And when I am mayor, the sale of JEA is off the table. It's not going to happen, and I'll make sure it doesn't.
We have a question from Renee from North Jacksonville, who asks, what are your plans to implement the Better Jacksonville plan that was approved more than 20 years ago to abandon the use of septic tanks and provide access to city water for all homes in Jacksonville proper? Ms. Deegan?
Well, again, this is a big priority of my administration. Infrastructure, and especially the neglected infrastructure in the city of Jacksonville, has got to be job one. Removing those septic tanks is so important. There are 22,000 of them that sit along the water line, that seep into our water and make our citizens sick. And what we hear over and over again, oh, you can't do it. We put $50 million in the budget. We halved that to $25 million. Why? Because what we're hearing is we can't convince people to take them out. Well, then you know what? Start an education program. Make sure that people understand the importance of it. And most people want those septic tanks removed. And the city has kicked the can down the road on it for so many years. It's got to become a priority. We've got to get them out of there. And we shouldn't be putting more septic tanks in the ground as we are now with our new building. We should not be using septic tanks in this city, especially a city on the water with so many vulnerable waterways.
Mr. Davis, your plan, if there is one, to connect all homes to Jacksonville water.
The St. Johns River is our crown jewel, and we should do everything we can to protect the environment that not only leads to job growth and attracts people to this community, but the river is fantastic. We need to do everything we can to make sure that it stays healthy. The Jobs for Jacks program has about $1 billion worth of infrastructure, from the Emerald Trail to roadways, but also focuses on about $100 million in septic tank removal. I'm going to make sure that we, as a conservative, common sense approach to this, make sure that every bit of that money gets out on the street. We're not going to have waste when I am making sure we manage this money the right way. And I'm going to put additional dollars into septic tank removal, because we have to protect our environment. We have to protect our river and all the tributaries that lead into the river. So septic tank removal is a high priority for me. I'm going to continue funding it, and I'm going to make sure the money that's already in the city's coffers is spent correctly so it actually happens.
We're going to go to another question from a viewer, but for some background, a Smart Growth America report from 2022 ranks Jacksonville metro area as the 6th highest in the nation for pedestrian deaths, and we cover a lot of them on Action News Jax. Sharon from the South Side asks, how are you planning to keep motorists and pedestrians safe? We start with Mr. Davis.
Well, I think this is all a part of making sure that we have plenty of law enforcement to make sure that people are riding on the roadways properly. And law enforcement is part of traffic enforcement. I think that we have to make sure that we have proper bike paths. We have to make sure that we have proper infrastructure funding to keep up with the growth that we're bringing to this community. As your next mayor, I'm going to make sure we keep City Hall small and more infrastructure dollars out on the street to make you safer. And it's going to make it more affordable for you, because you're going to be able to have the opportunity to fund these improvements. So I'm going to make sure that we are safer on the streets. We have plenty of officers on the streets to keep the motorists and the pedestrians acting the way they should. We shouldn't have people in the roadways walking in and out of the stop signs and the stop lights asking for donations. That's something that needs to make sure that we protect the citizens as they're stopping and going at the stoplights. It's a dangerous situation, and we need to make sure we're on top of it.
All right, that is time. And the same question from Ms. Deegan, answering Sharon's question. What is your plan to try to keep motorists and pedestrians safe in the city?
Well, look, we need to create a lot more walkable, bikeable areas in our city. I love the fact that we have that new pedestrian area that goes across the Fuller Warren Bridge. That's fantastic. We need a lot more of that, but we need to be creating our infrastructure intentionally in that way as well. I love the Emerald Trail project. I believe that's going to be an opportunity to connect neighborhoods with places where people will want to walk and ride, and be connected with places where they won't have to get in their cars all the time. But part of the solution to this is we want to get some of the cars off the road, right? So I like the idea of creating road diets in some area where we can create more sidewalks, more areas where pedestrians and bikers can be, so that we're not overcrowding our roads any more than we have to, and we can create communities that better serve the folks that would prefer to have those connected communities where you don't have to be in the car all the time.
Thank you both. Now I want to ask a few questions that reflect the diverse communities that we have here in Jacksonville. Since 2020, groups have called for the removal of the Confederate monument in Springfield. Others want it to stay. Where do you stand, Ms. Deegan?
Well, I have said repeatedly that I think any monument that denies the humanity of any group of people should go. And I think that So the bottom line is, though, I know there are people that would like to preserve them for history, and I think that's okay. We can remove them, we can put them in a museum, we can put them in context, but they cannot sit in the middle of a neighborhood where people are living, where they're a constant reminder of hate. That's just not something that we can have. And so I've said repeatedly, I would spend public money, just as our current mayor has said he would do, to remove those Confederate monuments, to make sure that people don't have to walk by them and be reminded of a time in our history that quite frankly, that we should be ashamed of.
And Mr. Davis, where do you stand on the removal of Confederate monuments in Jacksonville?
I'm not going to use taxpayer dollars to remove any monument in Jacksonville. I believe we need to focus on how we spend our money. And the children in the high-risk neighborhoods, if we were going to spend $1 million to take down a monument, what better use could we use that money for? To make sure these folks don't get in trouble, that they have the opportunity for after-school programming. That's such a better use of our taxpayer dollars. And so I am not going to use taxpayer dollars to remove any monument in Jacksonville.
All right, many renters have told us that they can't afford to renew their leases. According to Rent Cafe, the average monthly rent in Jacksonville is more than $1,500. So Ginny and Avondale asks, what is your plan to increase access to affordable housing? Mr. Davis.
Yes, I think this is incredibly important. I spent 14 years at the Northeast Florida Builders Association, and I understand how important it is to have affordable housing. When we talk about quality of life, if people don't have shelter, what are we doing? You can't even start quality of life if you don't have a safe place to live. And if we're bringing businesses here and the people that work there can't afford rent, what are we doing? I'm going to focus on workforce housing in Jacksonville. We're going to build 10,000 residential units in 8 years. We're going to make sure that we set aside city property. We're going to make sure that we use infrastructure funding for workforce housing. And we're going to reduce bloated red tape that restricts the access of people to get permits for workforce housing.
Mr. Davis, thank you. Ms. Deegan.
We are minus, I think, about 40,000 affordable housing units in this city right now. It really is a crisis for folks. And just like with everything else in this city, from infrastructure to healthcare to our economic development, we leave hundreds of millions of dollars of federal and state grant money on the table. We need to make sure we're going up and bringing down that money and using it for things like affordable housing. Many cities that are like-sized cities to us spend tens of millions of dollars more a year to try to solve their affordable housing problems. We do need more housing. We need to change our zoning in some areas to create more multifamily housing. That's a part of the way we can solve that problem. We also need to make sure that we're dealing with these out-of-state folks that are coming in here and buying up properties and jacking up the rents and creating a situation where we're robbing people of their generational wealth. So there are a number of ways in which we can deal with this, but I also think we should ask our developers, if they're going to get city incentives, you need to set aside some of those units for affordable housing. There are all sorts of ways to deal with this, to skin that cat, but we've got to put more money in the game.
Several voters sent us questions about a political ad that is running right now that mentions the Black Lives Matter movement. What message do you think that ad is meant to convey? Ms. Deegan.
Well, to me, it's meant to lie about me and say that I was in the middle of a bunch of violent protests and I support a bunch of violent people. The truth is, a lot of mamas like me saw George Floyd screaming for his mother and for his life when he was being murdered. And a lot of us, including our sheriff and our mayor, were out in those marches. I was never involved in a violent march. I support Black lives. I understand that there are people that are involved at the top of that movement that are not good people. But I'm just going to tell you, that movement was about racism. It was not about that movement. It was about racism, and it was about George Floyd. And we had promises made to the people in this community that things were going to change. I want to know what's changed. That's why I say we need better communication between our police and our residents. And I think it's really unfortunate that that ad would frame me the way it did, because I supported those mamas that have to worry every time their sons walk out the door.
Mr. Davis, same question. There's an ad running that mentions the Black Lives Matter movement. What message do you think that ad was meant to convey?
It's clearly a message about making your streets safer. It's about defunding the police. It's about placing radical activists in charge of the police department. We've seen it all across this country. We saw it this weekend in Chicago. This is a serious, serious issue for the citizens of Jacksonville. If you say to yourself, the things that are happening in San Francisco and the things that are happening in Chicago and the things that are happening in Oregon could never happen to Jacksonville, Florida, you have to think again. The relationship between the mayor and the sheriff is critically, critically important. I'm going to be a partner to Sheriff T.K. Waters. He is duly elected by the citizens to keep us safe. And I cannot wait to make sure he has every resource he needs to continue driving this crime rate down. And the defund the police movement is not going to come to Jacksonville, Florida.
And we want to remind our audience to please limit the commentary so we can continue to get through our questions.
I really want to respond to that. Could I please just respond to that?
The rules state that the rebuttals only come if you are attacked or your name is used. So according to the rules.
Well, Mr. Davis, try to pay attention to what I'm saying then, would you? Because there's no activist review board that has charge over the sheriff.
We have to move on. According to the rules of the debate.
Let's move on to panhandling. Mr. Davis, you mentioned panhandling briefly when talking about traffic enforcement. And Kim from the West Side says she doesn't think that the city's new ordinance ticketing panhandlers at intersections is working. What would you do to address the problem?
Well, I mentioned that it's unsafe on many levels to have people walking in and out of traffic when people are stopping and starting. I also believe that we in Jacksonville don't allow people to go hungry either. So we're going to serve the population that needs food and shelter, but we're also going to keep our citizens safe. And that's what I'm going to do. I think we need to let this ordinance breathe a little bit and understand if it's working. Make sure we talk to the sheriff's office to say, do you need more tools to make sure you can enforce this? And so I don't want to react too quickly. I want to make sure we let the ordinance breathe, make sure we find out if we need to add amendments or anything to it. But it's a very, very important issue for me and for the citizens. I'm going to work hard on that.
Just to repeat, Ms. Deegan, Kim from the West Side doesn't think the city's new ordinance ticketing panhandlers at intersections is working. What would you do to address the problem?
Well, listen, ultimately the problem is to create a scenario where folks that have issues like mental health issues or have issues like drug addiction are dealt with. That's really why those folks are on the streets. We have a lot of homeless veterans out there that sometimes find themselves in a situation where they're asking people for help. Look, I don't like the idea of criminalizing folks who need help. I know we don't want them out on the streets, and I know it is not safe, but what we need to do is we need to invest in the services, some wonderful nonprofits that we have here, and my public health program where I will have a public health physician that creates a scenario where we bring down more federal dollars for our nonprofits. One of those things would be for mental health. And we can create an education program around that, and they connect people to those services. It's incredibly important that we get underneath why these things are happening. And I think I understand what she is saying. I think we need a better way to deal with it. It costs about $720 a night to keep one of those folks in jail. I could put them in the Marriott for that amount of money.
And this next question, we're going to start with you, Ms. Deegan. You mentioned veterans. We have a huge veteran population here, and a lot of them have to travel to Gainesville for their medical care. Do you think that we need a VA hospital here in Jacksonville? And if so, what would you do to get it here? And if not, what's an alternative? Again, we'll start with you.
Well, you know, I've met with so many veterans groups during this campaign, and honestly, that is not their number one concern. That's not what I hear over and over again. What I hear is that what they have asked for many, many years in this city is a community center. They believe that what they need more than anything else is an ability to connect with one another. They believe nobody else understands their pain and what they've been through like a fellow veteran. And they believe if they had a place to gather, that would be an opportunity for them to heal. And so when I have met with them myriad times, they have said to me that in addition to just wanting what every other citizen in Jacksonville wants, which is an opportunity, they would like a place to gather.
Same question. Would you support bringing a VA hospital here to Jacksonville, and what alternative would you propose if not?
Sure. We are so blessed to have the healthcare systems that we have in Jacksonville. They're partners with us at the Chamber, and they bring so much to our community. We're very, very fortunate. Very few places have what we have. And of course, I would be in favor of bringing a Veterans Hospital to Jacksonville. That would be fantastic. I would be in favor of that. But we also need to remember when these folks, we have about 100,000 military professionals that are serving us in Northeast Florida at this moment. About 3,000 of them every year finish their duty to our country, and we're able to keep about 84% here in Jacksonville, Florida, because we've created this quality of life that's so exceptional. We need to make sure that they have adequate jobs and are connected to the adequate jobs. That's something that we're going to focus on, and we have been, making sure we plug those veterans and the spouses of the veterans into the economy to where they can thrive and they can flourish. And that's going to be something that we really focus on in the mayor's office.
As you both know, perception is often reality. What would you do as mayor to improve the city's image nationally and perhaps secure a major convention, perhaps a sporting event like the draft or even the Super Bowl again? Start with you, Mr. Davis.
You know, I think that we have an incredible story to tell. We've been so successful over the last several years of bringing major corporations, worldwide corporations, to this community. I think the secret's out. We cannot have a great city without a great downtown. We have to focus on that because you can see it in other communities like Pittsburgh that have revitalized their downtown, Nashville's revitalized their downtown, even Chattanooga and Greenville have revitalized their downtown. It attracts more talent here. It's something that we have to do over the next 8 years, and I will focus on that as mayor. And I think that that's something that should be a big focal point to attract the best talent here. We're on the map, and we're going to attract more companies here. We will be the fintech capital of the world in Jacksonville, Florida.
Ms. Deegan, what would you do to help improve the image of the city and draw big events?
Well, I think downtown is certainly important, and I hope I have expressed that I think it's a very important place to focus on too. But I think the biggest issue we have in this city right now is our culture. And we are actually renowned around the country for our culture of corruption in this city. There are a lot of people that don't like to do business here because we have a zero-sum punishment politics sort of system here in Jacksonville. We have folks that have been in charge in this city for far too long. The same folks running his campaign will be in his administration that are running the city right now. Those folks just give deals to their friends and their donors. And let's be honest, the big developers in this city, they know who their friend is, right? But it's only a certain amount of them, there's certain ones that get everything in this city. We need to change the culture of this city. We have to bring more small businesses in. We need to bring others in who have been left behind and open up the transparency, let the sunshine in, and bring Jacksonville back to a place where we can all live and thrive.
Mr. Davis, you have 30 seconds to respond.
I actually love my city. I think it's great. The reason so many people want to move here right now is because we have an exceptional quality of life. So you at home, don't be dismayed. We're going to continue growing Jacksonville. We're going to continue creating better quality of life and give you the resources you need to have a safer neighborhood and get more infrastructure into your neighborhood that you deserve. Don't be dismayed. We're heading in the right direction, and I'm going to lead us further. I'm going to help us reach the goals that we all know Jacksonville should be.
All right, thank you both. It is now time for our closing statements.
We want to thank both candidates for answering tonight's questions. As we start our close, just a reminder, there are no rebuttals for the closing statements, but you do each get 1 minute. Let's start with Ms. Deegan.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for the time to share tonight. That went way too fast. Listen, I believe that we can bring this city together in unity, but we cannot do it by having unfettered power like we have had in this city for the past 8 years. The same folks who are dividing us with these toxic politics, these toxic ads, the same folks that don't allow you to have a differing opinion unless you want to lose your job or unless you want to get taken down. I want to bring this city together. I want us to be a city that works for all of us, that celebrates its differences, that celebrates the beautiful mosaic that is this city. And I believe if we have someone in this office who will break the cycle, of fear and division, I honestly believe that if we break that fever one time, if we say we no longer will accept this sort of behavior in our city, then we will not be that city any longer. We will recognize all of our potential, and we will be the city that works finally for all of us. And I want to be that person that can bring us together.
Thank you, Ms. Deegan. Mr. Davis, your closing statement.
I'm going to make Jacksonville a safer, more affordable city. But I want to take just a moment to speak to the mothers and the fathers and the sons and the daughters of our first responders. I'm going to work every day to make sure your family member and our sheriff have all the resources they need to keep our city safe and to keep your family members safe. We are going to make sure we have a smaller government so we can get more infrastructure to your neighborhoods. We're going to make sure we set aside city property so we can build more workforce housing for our teachers and our firefighters and our police officers. We're going to keep our taxes low, and we're going to improve your quality of life. We're going to make Jacksonville safer. We're going to make Jacksonville more affordable. My name is Daniel Davis, and I would be honored to have your vote on May 16th. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
All right, as we wrap, we want to finally say thank you very much to both candidates for being here, for getting involved in this race. We appreciate that. And we appreciate everybody at home for joining us for this Jacksonville mayoral debate. It's an important part of this process. Also, I want to thank the University of North Florida for having us and for our live audience for participating. Action News Jack's Ben Becker has been watching this debate with two political analysts. You can go to actionnewsjax.com or on the Action News Jax app right now to hear what they have to say about all of this.
Yeah, you can also watch that wherever you stream. Please remember, Election Day is May 16th, so remember to get out and vote. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you tonight at 10 and 11.
Live from the campus of UNF, thanks for watching the Daniel Davis Donna Deegan Mayoral Debate.